Africa is rich enough to feed itself, build its own factories, create millions of jobs, and become one of the most powerful continents on earth. Yet millions of Africans still struggle every single day. Why? Is it corruption? Is it colonialism? Is it bad leadership? Or is there something even bigger? Something many people don't even realize. Burkina Faso's president, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, believes Africa's biggest prison isn't made of iron bars. It is made of the mind. According to him, Africa cannot become truly free until Africans stop believing that everything good must come from somewhere else. He says real freedom isn't just about removing foreign soldiers. It isn't just about changing presidents. It starts the day Africans believe in themselves again. These words have started debates across Africa. Some people call him the new Thomas Sankara. Others say he is too radical. Some believe he is finally saying what millions of Africans have been thinking for years. But what exactly did he say? Why has his speech spread so quickly across the continent? And could this way of thinking really change Africa forever? Stay with us, because by the end of this video, you will understand something about Africa's story that most textbooks never taught you. Today, let's break it down. When many African countries gained independence in the 1950s and 1960s, people celebrated, flags changed, national anthems changed, new president took office. For many people, it felt like a brand new beginning. The belief was simple. Once colonial rule ended, Africa would finally decide its own future. Crowds gathered in the streets, elders wept. Children were told a new story that their grandchildren would never know what it felt like to be ruled by a foreign flag. But decades later, many Africans are asking a painful question. Did political independence really bring true freedom? Because when you look around, many African countries still export raw materials, then buy back finished products at much higher prices. Think about it. Africa grows cocoa, but chocolate worth billions of dollars is mostly made somewhere else. Africa mines gold, but many expensive jewelry brands are located outside Africa. Africa grows cotton, yet many Africans buy clothes made overseas. Africa produces crude oil, but many countries still import refined fuel. So the question becomes, who is really making the biggest money? This is a question Ibrahim Traoré wants Africans to think about. According to him, the problem is not that Africa lacks resources. The problem is that Africa keeps giving away its wealth before adding value to it. Imagine a farmer. He harvests hundreds of bags of maize. Instead of making flour, instead of producing cornflakes, instead of packaging food, he sells everything cheaply. Then later, he goes to the supermarket and buys products made from his own maize at 10 times the price. Who really made the profits? Not the farmer, the person who processed it. Traoré believes this is exactly what has happened to Africa for decades. And unless that changes, the continent will continue to work hard while others enjoy most of the rewards. He keeps repeating one message: Africa must produce what it consumes. How many everyday products in your home were actually made in Africa? Your phone, your laptop, your television, your medicines, your baby food, your car. Many of these products travel thousands of kilometers before reaching African homes. That means factories, research, technology, and profit are also traveling somewhere else. Traoré argues that these cannot continue forever. History has shown that countries depending heavily on imports become vulnerable during global crisis. He says Africa should become strong enough to stand on its own feet. And he also believes many Africans have accepted the idea that anything made outside Africa must automatically be better. He says that mindset must change. Before a nation changes its economy, it must first change how it sees itself. Think about how deep this runs. A shopper in a market in Accra or Lagos or Nairobi would sometimes pick up a locally made shirt and put it back down, simply because the label doesn't say imported. A parent will choose a foreign brand of milk over a local one, even when the local one is fresher, because somewhere along the way they were taught that foreign means better and local means less than. Traore calls this a kind of invisible colonization. Not soldiers, not flags, just a quiet belief passed down for generations that Africans' own hands cannot build anything worth having. To understand why Traore talks the way he does, you have to go back, not just to independence in the 1960s, but further to the colonial economic system itself. Colonial powers didn't build African economies to serve African people, they built them to serve the factories back home. Railways were built, but notice where they went, not city to city, to connect African markets to each other. Port to mine, port to plantation. The goal was simple: get the raw materials out as fast and as cheaply as possible and ship it to Europe to be turned into something valuable. Cocoa left the coast to the West Africa in sacks. It came back years later as chocolate bars wrapped in foil, sold at prices most cocoa farmers could never even afford. Copper left Central Africa in raw chunks, and it came back as wiring, machinery, electronics, worth many more times than the raw oil ever was. When independence came, the flags changed, but in many places, the railway still went from mine to port. The factories that could have turned raw cotton into finished clothes were never built at scale. The economic shape of the colonial era, extract raw, import finished, didn't disappear overnight. In many countries, it simply continued, decade after decade, sometimes with new partners, but with the same basic pattern. This is a history Traore keeps pointing back to, not to dwell on the past out of bitterness, but he believes you cannot fix a problem you refuse to name. He argues the real independence was never fully finished. Political independence came, economic independence did not, and he believes that gap between the two is exactly where Africa has been stuck for over 60 years. Traore asks a simple question: why can't Africa make more of the things it uses every day? He is not saying Africa should stop trading with the world. No country anywhere produces everything it needs. Trade is normal. He is asking why Africa exports raw materials while importing finished products, a very different problem than trade itself. West Africa produces most of the world's cocoa, yet expensive chocolate is mostly made elsewhere. The same pattern appears with gold, cotton, coffee, cashew, timber, and oil. The raw materials leave, the value is added somewhere else. The finished products come back at a much higher price. Traore believes Africa should build industries, factories, research centers, technology companies, food processing plants. Every factory creates jobs, every job gives hope, and every processing plant keeps just a little more of the profit at home. A money that can build roads, pay teachers, and fund hospitals. He also questions why Africa imports so much food despite having huge areas of fertile land. He believes producing more food locally will strengthen the continent. Picture this: a country with rivers, with rain, with some of the most fertile soil on the planet, and yet ships loaded with imported rice, imported meat, imported frozen chicken, dock at its ports every single week. Money leaves the country every time that ship docks. Money that could have gone to a local farmer instead. He also points to debates around imported food standards, questions about why certain products are sold in some markets but restricted in others, and who really benefits from that argument. For him, the bigger question is simple: why should Africa depend so heavily on imported food? He says Africa should invest in local businesses, local industries, and local innovation. Not someday, not when conditions are right, but now. Because he believes every year of delay is another year of wealth leaving the continent before it ever gets the chance to multiply at home. Traore's argument becomes even more interesting when you compare Africa to other regions they were once just as poor. Take South Korea. In 1950s, a devastating war, South Korea was one of the poorest countries on earth, poorer at the same time than many other African nations. It had almost no natural resources to speak of. No oil, no gold rush, no diamond mines. What it built instead was industry, factories, steel, shipbuilding, electronics. Decade after decade, it's moved from making cheap exports to making some of the most advanced technology products in the world. Today, phones, cars, and ships built there are sold across the globe, including back into Africa. Ironically, to countries that hold far more natural wealth than South Korea ever did. Traore's point isn't that Africa should copy South Korea exactly. Every country's path is different. His point is simpler than that. Resources alone were never the declining factor. What mattered was the decision to stop exporting raw materials and start building feast value at home. Rwanda is another example that gets mentioned in these conversations. A small landlocked country with limited natural resources that invested heavily in local processing, technology, and reducing its dependence on imports for certain goods. Progress there hasn't been simple or uncontested. No country's economic story ever is, but it is often cited as proof that deliberate long-term choices can shift a country's trajectory even without vast mineral wealth. The message Traore draws from this example is consistent. It is not fate that keeps a country exporting raw materials forever. It is policy. It is investment. It is a decision made and remade year after year about what kind of economy a country wants to build. Traore says Africa should not remain in a position where it is always waiting for help. Aid has saved lives. That cannot be denied. Emergency food aid during famine, vaccine during outbreaks, medical support during crisis. These have real measurable value and no serious argument denies that. But he believes Africa must build economies that no longer depend on constant assistance. He points to Africa's enormous wealth: gold, oil, gas, diamonds, cobalt, copper, lithium, huge farmland, a young population. He asks why countries with all these resources still struggle. Gold is central to his arguments. Burkina Faso itself is one of Africa's larger gold producers. For years, questions have circulated about how much of that gold value actually stayed inside the country versus flowing out through foreign mining contracts, and how these arrangements were negotiated in the first place. He believes African resources should benefit African people first. Supporters believe stronger national control over resources, better contracts, more local processing, more transparency can fund schools, hospitals, and infrastructure. Critics warn that governments must still attract investment, and that if the term shifts abruptly or unpredictably, foreign companies may simply take their capitals elsewhere, leaving mines undersourced and workers without jobs. Both sides of this debate raise real concerns. Moves too slowly and a country keeps losing value it desperately needs. Moves too fast or too predictable and it risks scaring away the very investment and expertise it may still need in the short term. The debate continues, not just in Burkina Faso, but across rich nations worldwide. Traore also believes the biggest battle is in the mind. He says generations of slavery and colonialism left psychological scars, a lingering sense passed down without anyone consciously choosing it, that African efforts, African ideas, and African-made products are somehow less than. He believes Africans must rediscover confidence in themselves. Confidence followed by action, because belief alone builds nothing. But without belief, nothing gets attempted in the first place. There's another number that comes up again and again in conversations about Africa's future. Africa has the youngest population of any continent on Earth. Hundreds of millions of young people, many still years away from adulthood, growing up right now, decided, often without even realizing it, what kind of continent they will build. Some economists call this a demographic dividend, a potential advantage most aging economies around the world simply don't have. But a dividend is not automatic. It has to be built for schools that teach real, usable skills, universities connected to actual industries, not just paper certificates, access to capital so that a young person with an idea can actually start a business instead of watching that idea die for lack of funding. Traore's message lands especially hard with younger audience, many of whom feel like previous generations negotiated their future away without asking them. They didn't sign the old contracts, they didn't agree to the old terms, and many of them are asking, loudly and increasingly online, in music, in protest, in everyday conversation, whether the next 60 years have to look like the last 60 years. No debate this big has only one side, and a fair account of Traore's message has to include the pushback. Some economists argue that building local industry takes enormous time, capital, and stable institutions, none of which appear overnight, especially in countries also dealing with security challenges as Burkina Faso currently is. Others point out that accurately renegotiating resource deals can spook investors, and that some of these countries praised for rapid industrialization also rely heavily on foreign capital, foreign expertise, and foreign markets in their early years. The very relationships some of this rhetoric seems to reject. There are also critics who argue that leaders who talk about self-reliance sometimes use that language to justify consolidating power delays or silencing dissent, and that economic independence can become a convenient banner for other less economic goals. Supporters respond that skepticism towards foreign involvement is not the same as rejecting all cooperation, and that argument isn't cut off the world, but stop letting the terms of relationships be decided somewhere else. None of these arguments cancel each other out neatly. They exist together, in tension, the way most view political debates do. And that tension is exactly why Traore's speeches have traveled so far, because they touch a nerve that isn't unique to Burkina Faso. It is a question nearly every formerly colonized nation has to sit with in one form or the other. Many compare Ibrahim Traoré with Thomas Sankara. Sankara encouraged local production, local clothing, local food. He believed dependence weakened nations. His famous words still echo today: "He who feeds you controls you." Today, many hear similar themes in Traore's speeches. Whether people agree or disagree with him, his message has started an important conversation. Can Africa build more for itself? Can it create more jobs? Can it process more of its own resources? Can African countries trade more with one another instead of routing so much trade through ports thousands of miles away? These questions will shape the continent's future. Real independence isn't more than just a flag. It is the ability to feed your people, create jobs, build industries, develop technology, and make decisions with confidence. Africa's future will not be decided by speeches alone. It will be built by millions of ordinary Africans, farmers, teachers, engineers, doctors, entrepreneurs, students, the mother selling vegetables at a roadside stall, deciding whether to save enough to send her daughter to school for more than 1 year. A young caller in a shared workspace building an app for farmers who have never used a smartphone before. The factory worker learning a new machine, one shift at a time. None of them will ever give a speech that goes viral, but together, their daily decisions are the real engine of whatever comes next. The question is no longer whether Africa has the resources. The world already knows it does. The real question is whether Africa can turn these resources into lasting prosperity for its own people and whether the mindset shift Traore keeps talking about can spread beyond speeches into policy, into classrooms, into everyday choices of a continent of over 1 billion people. That is a far bigger task any one leader in any one country can accomplish alone. But every big shift in history started the same way, as an idea that enough people started to believe was possible. What do you think? Do you believe Ibrahim Traoré's vision of African self-reliance is the right path? Or do you think it is more complicated than that? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this documentary, subscribe to AfriArise, like this video, and turn on notifications. Thank you for watching. My name is Blessed Chris. I will see you in the next one.